That in sense percepts and phenomena which precedes the logical use of the intellect is called appearance, while the reflex knowledge originating from several appearances compared by the intellect is called experience. Thus there is no way from appearance to experience except by reflection according to the logical use of the intellect. The common concepts of experience are termed empirical, its objects phenomena, and the laws as well of experience as of all sensuous cognition generally are called the laws of phenomena. Empirical concepts, then, are not by a reduction to greater universality rendered intellectual in the real sense and do not transcend the species of sensuous cognition, but, however high abstraction may carry them, remain indefinitely sensuous. Paragraph 6. Now as to strictly intellectual concepts in which the use of the intellect is real. Such concepts both of objects and relations are given by the very nature of the intellect, are not abstracted from any use of the senses, and do not contain any form of sensuous knowledge as such. It is needful here to take note of the extreme ambiguity of the word abstract, which, in order not to confuse our disquisition on intellectual concepts, must be removed to begin with, for properly we should say abstract from some things, not abstract something. The former denotes that in a concept we give no attention to other matters in whatsoever way they may be connected with it. But the latter, that it is not given but in the concrete and so as to be separated from what it is conjoined with. Hence an intellectual concept abstracts from everything sensuous, it is not abstracted from sensuous things, and perhaps would be more correctly called abstracting than abstract. Intellectual concepts it is more cautious, therefore, to call pure ideas, and concepts given only empirically, abstract ideas. Paragraph 7. From the foregoing it will be seen that it is badly to expound the sensuous, to call it the more confusedly known, and the intellectual the distinctly known. For these are only logical distinctions and plainly do not touch the data underlying all logical comparison. The sensuous may be exceedingly distinct while intellectual concepts are extremely confused. The former we observe in the prototype of sensuous knowledge, geometry. The latter, in the organon of all intellectual concepts, metaphysics. It is evident how much toil the latter is expending to dispel the fogs of confusion darkening the common intellect, though not always with the happy success of the former science. Nevertheless, any cognition retains the marks of its origin, the former, however distinct, being called by Genesis sensuous. The latter, no matter how confused, remaining intellectual, as for instance, the moral concepts, which are known not experientially but by the pure intellect itself. The writer fears that wolf by the distinction between the sensuous and the intellectual, which to him is only logical, checked, perhaps wholly, and to the great detriment of philosophy. That noble enterprise of antiquity of discussing the nature of phenomena and noumena, turning us from the investigation of these to what are frequently but logical trifles. Paragraph 8. The primary philosophy containing the principles of the use of pure intellect is metaphysics. But there is a science propedutical to it, showing the distinction of sensuous cognition from intellectual, a specimen of which we present in this dissertation. Empirical principles not being found in metaphysics, the concepts to be met within it are not then to be sought for in the senses but in the very nature of pure intellect. Not as connate notions but as abstracted from laws whose seat is in the mind by attending to the actions of the mind on the occasion of experience, and hence as acquired. Of this species are possibility, existence, necessity, substance, cause, etc. with their opposites and correlates, which, never entering as parts into any sensual representation, can by no means have been abstracted thence. Paragraph 9. The purpose of intellectual concepts is mainly twofold. In the first place refutative, by which they are of negative use when, shutting off sensuous concepts from noumena, though not advancing science a hair's breadth, they maintain however its immunity from the contagion of error. In the second place dogmatic, following which the general principles of pure intellect, such as are set forth in ontology or rational psychology, go forth into an exemplar inconceivable except by pure intellect, and the common measure of all other things considered as realities, namely, noumenal perfection. The latter is such either in the theoretical or in the practical sense. Opening square bracket. 3. In the former it is the highest being, God. In the latter sense, it is moral perfection. Moral philosophy. Then, inasmuch as supplying the first principles of judgment is not cognized except by pure intellect, and itself belongs to pure philosophy, and Epicurus reducing its criteria to deduction from the sense of pleasure or pain is rightly reprehended, together with some moderns following him a certain distance from afar, as Shaftesbury and his adherents. In any class of things having variable quantity, the maximum is the common measure and the principle of cognition. Now the maximum of perfection is called ideal, by Plato, idea. For instance, his idea of a republic, and is the principle of all that is contained under the general notion of any perfection, inasmuch as the lesser grades are not thought determinable but by limiting the maximum. But God, the ideal of perfection, and hence the principle of cognition, is also, as existing really, the principle of the creation of all perfection. Paragraph 10. To man, no intuition of intellectual concepts is given, only symbolical cognition, and intellection is granted us only by universal concepts in the abstract, not by the concrete singular. For all intuition is restricted by some principle of form under which alone anything can be discerned by the mind immediately or as singular, and not merely conceived discursively by general concepts. This formal principle of our intuition, space and time, is the condition under which something can be an object of our senses, and hence as a condition of sensuous knowledge is not a medium for intellectual intuition. Besides, all the material of our cognition is given only by the senses, but the noumenon, as such, is not conceivable by representations drawn from sensations. Hence the intellectual concept, as such, is destitute of all data of human intuition. For the intuition of our mind is always passive, and therefore possible only to the extent to which something can affect our senses. But the divine intuition, the cause, not the consequence, of objects being independent, is the archetype, and hence perfectly intellectual. Paragraph 11. But although phenomena are properly the appearances of things, but not ideas, or express the inner and absolute quality of objects, their cognition is nevertheless of the truest. For in the first place, being apprehended sensual concepts, they, being consequences, witness the presence of the object contrary to idealism. And as regards judgments concerning that which is sensuously known, since truth in judging consists in the agreement of the predicate with the given subject, and since the concept of the subject as a phenomenon is given only by relation to the sensuous cognitive faculty, the sensuously observable predicates being given according to the same, it is plain that the representations of subject and predicate are made according to common laws, and hence give occasion for perfectly true cognition. Paragraph 12. All sense objects are phenomena. But that which, not touching our senses, contains the form only of sensuality, belongs to pure intuition, that is, an intuition devoid of sensations but not on that account intellectual. Phenomena of the external sense are examined and set forth in physics. Those of the internal sense in empirical psychology. But pure human intuition is not a universal or logical concept under which, but a singular in which all sensible objects are thought, and hence contains concepts of space and time, which, since they determine nothing concerning sensible objects as to quality, are not the objects of science except as to quantity. Hence pure mathematics considers space in geometry and time in pure mechanics. To these is to be added a certain concept, intellectual to be sure in itself, but whose becoming actual in the concrete requires the auxiliary notions of time and space in the successive addition and simultaneous juxtaposition of separate units, which is the concept of number treated in arithmetic, pure mathematics. Then, expounding the form of our entire sensuous cognition, is the organon of all intuitive and distinct knowledge. And since its objects are not only the formal principles of all intuition, but themselves original intuitions, it confers cognition both perfectly true, and the model of the highest degree of clearness to others. There is given, therefore, a science of sensual things, though being phenomena there is not given a real intellection, but a logical one only. Hence it is plain in what sense those borrowing from the Eleatic school are to be thought to have denied a science of phenomena. Section 3. On the principles of the form of the sensible world. Paragraph 13. The principle of the form of a universe is that which contains the cause of the universal tie by means of which all substances and their states pertain to one which is called a world. The principle of the form of the sensible world is that which contains the cause of the universal tie of all things regarded as phenomena. The form of the intelligible world acknowledges an objective principle, that is, some cause by which it is the colligation of what exists in it. But the world regarded as phenomenon, that is, in respect to the sensibility of the human mind, acknowledges no principle of form but a subjective one. That is, a certain mental law by which it is necessary that all things qualified for being objects of the senses would seem to pertain necessarily to the same whole. Whatever be, therefore, the principle of the form of the sensible world, it will comprise only actual things in as far as thought of as possibly falling under sense perception. Hence neither immaterial substances, which as such are excluded by definition from the external senses altogether, nor the cause of the world, which, since by it the mind exists and has the power of sense perception, cannot be the object of the senses. These formal principles of the phenomenal universe which are absolutely primary, universal, and, so to speak, the outlines and conditions of anything else whatsoever in human sensuous cognition, I shall now show to be two. Time and space. Paragraph 14. Of time. 1. The idea of time does not originate in, but is presupposed by the senses. Whether things falling under sense perception be simultaneous or in line of succession cannot be represented but by the idea of time. Nor does succession beget the concept of time. It appeals to it. Hence the notion of time, though acquired by experience, is badly defined by a series of actual things existing one after another, for what the word after means I understand only by the previous concept of time. For those things are after one another which exist at different times, as those are simultaneous which exist at the same time. 2. The idea of time is singular, not general. For any time whatever is thought only as a part of one and the same unmeasured time. If you think 2 years, you cannot represent them to yourself but in a mutually determinate position. And if they do not immediately follow one the other, you cannot think of them except as connected by some intermediate time, which of different times is first and which later can be defined in no way by any marks conceivable by the intellect, unless you are willing to run into a circle, and the mind discerns it by no more than one intuition. Besides, we conceive of all actual things as posited in time, not as contained as common marks under a general notion of time. 3. The idea of time, therefore, is an intuition, and being conceived before all sensation as the condition of the relations occurring in sensible things, it is not a sensual but pure intuition. 4. Time is a continuous quantity and the principle of the laws of continuity and the changes of the universe. For a continuous quantity is one which does not consist of simple parts. But since by time are only thought relations without any mutually related data, there is in time, as a quantity, composition, which being conceived wholly removed leaves nothing over. But a composite of which composition being removed nothing is left does not consist of simple parts. Therefore, etc. Any part of time, then, is time. And the simple things in time, namely, the moments, are not parts of it but termini between which time intervenes. For two moments being given, time is not given, except as in their actualities succeed each other. Hence beside the given moment it is necessary that time be given in the latter part of which there is another moment. The metaphysical law of continuity is this. All changes are continuous or flowing, that is, opposite states succeed each other only by an intermediate series of different states. For since two opposite states are in different moments of time, and some time is always intercepted between two moments, in which infinite series of moments the substance is neither in one assignable state nor the other, nor yet in none, it will be in different states, and so on infinitely. the celebrated Kastner, calling in question this Leibnizian law. 4. Calls on its defenders to demonstrate that the continuous motion of the point around the sides of a triangle is impossible, it being necessary to prove this if the law of continuity be granted. Here is the demonstration required. Let the letters A, B, C denote the three angular points of a rectilineal triangle. If the point did move continuously over the lines AB, BC, CA, that is, over the perimeter of the figure, it would be necessary for it to move at the point B in the direction AB, and also at the same point B in the direction BC. These motions being diverse, they cannot be simultaneous. Therefore, the moment of presence of the movable point at vertex B, considered as moving in the direction AB, is different from the moment of presence of the movable point at the same vertex B considered as moving in the same direction BC. But between two moments there is time. Therefore, the movable point is present at point B for some time, that is, it rests. Therefore it does not move continuously, which is contrary to the assumption. The same demonstration is valid for motion over any right lines, including an assignable angle. Hence a body does not change its direction in continuous motion except by following a line no part of which is straight, that is, a curve, as Leibniz maintained. 5. Time is not something objective and real, neither a substance, nor an accident, nor a relation. It is the subjective condition necessary by the nature of the human mind for coordinating any sensible objects among themselves by a certain law. Time is a pure intuition. Substances as well as accidents we coordinate, whether according to simultaneity or succession, by the concept only of time. Hence the notion of time as the principle of form outranks the concepts of the former. Any relations so far as occurring in sense perception, whether simultaneous or successive, involve nothing but the determination of positions in time, to wit, either in the same point or in different points of the latter. Those who assert the objective reality of time either conceive of it as a continuous flow in what exists without, however, any existing thing, as is.